As a Gen X myself, I have to ask, why the sad music? Why do people look back at our childhood like it was something tragic? We are proud of that struggle, proud of that chaos, proud of surviving without supervision. We made fun of each other, rode bikes until dark, came home to empty houses, and somehow, we turned out strong. We are a different kind of tough, the true FAFO generation. And if you grew up in the 70s, 80s, or early 90s, you didn't just grow up. You adapted. You endured. You figured life out before anyone taught you how. Every generation has a personality. Baby boomers were the builders. They believed in hard work, rules, and stability. Millennials became the dreamers. They questioned everything and chased purpose. Gen Z grew up digital. They were born into technology, social media, and constant connection. But Gen X became the middle child of history. Not the loudest, not the most protected, not the most celebrated, just overlooked. And in that quiet space, something unusual happened. A generation learned independence before adulthood. A generation learned survival before guidance. A generation learned responsibility before comfort. They were called the latchkey kids. You remember the sound, the key turning in the door, the click of the lock. No parents, no supervision, no one asking how your day was. Just silence. You dropped your backpack, turned on the TV, made yourself a snack, and waited. Sometimes for hours. Not because your parents didn't care, because they were working, because life was busy, because survival required sacrifice. And without realizing it, you learned independence early. Learned to cook, learned to solve problems, learned to entertain yourself. You became responsible before anyone officially made you responsible. Remember when you played outside until sunset? No phones, no GPS, no tracking apps, just freedom, risky freedom. Real freedom. You climbed trees, you scraped your knees, you figured things out the hard way. And when you got hurt, you got back up. No safety nets, no constant warnings, no overprotection. You learned resilience through experience, not lectures. Why Gen X became so independent. Independence wasn't a personality trait. It was a necessity. Many Gen X children grew up during rising divorce rates, economic uncertainty, working parents, changing families. Life felt unstable. So you became stable. You learned to rely on yourself because sometimes that was the only option. And that self-reliance followed you into adulthood. Gen X didn't process pain with therapy. You processed pain with humor, sarcasm, jokes, teasing. You laughed at things that hurt. Not because you were insensitive, because laughter made survival easier. Humor became your armor. And even today, you still joke about serious things. Gen X learned one rule early. Actions have consequences. Nobody rescued you. Nobody softened the fall. Nobody fixed your mistakes. So you learned responsibility. You learned accountability. You learned reality. Touch the stove. You get burned. Skip school, you deal with the consequences. Make bad choices, you face the results. That mindset created a generation that doesn't expect life to be easy. Gen X didn't grow up talking about feelings. You grew up managing them. Quietly. You handled fear alone. You handled stress alone. You handled disappointment alone. And over time, you became emotionally independent. You didn't panic easily. You adapted. The analog childhood versus digital adulthood. Gen X lived in two worlds. You grew up analog, then entered adulthood digital. You used cassette tapes, then streaming services. You wrote letters, then emails. You memorized phone numbers, then saved contacts. You experienced change faster than any generation before you. And instead of resisting, you adapted. That adaptability became your superpower. You saw systems fail. You saw companies lay off workers. You saw marriages break apart. You saw promises disappear. So you learned caution. You learned skepticism. You learned to trust actions more than words. So when you became parents, you did things differently. You became more present, more protective, more aware, because you remembered what it felt like to be alone. You didn't want your children to grow up the way you did, but you also wanted them to be strong. So you tried to balance protection and independence. Many Gen X adults carry invisible pressure. They support their children. They support their parents. They support their families. They work. They provide. They keep everything running, but rarely complain, because they were raised to handle things quietly. And this is why Gen X feels invisible. Boomers dominated the headlines. Millennials dominated the internet. Gen Z dominates social media. And Gen X stayed quiet, worked hard, built families, built businesses, built stability, but rarely received recognition. You became the backbone of society, without applause. The real strength of Gen X. Gen X strength isn't loud. It's steady. It's practical. It's dependable. You don't panic. You solve problems. You don't complain. You adapt. You don't wait for help. You figure things out. So again, as a Gen X myself, I must say our childhood wasn't perfect, but it made us strong. It made us resilient. It made us capable. We were the kids who raised ourselves, the adults who carried responsibility, the generation that learned life early. We are not broken. We are not forgotten. We are a different kind of tough, the true FAFO generation. And deep down, you already know that.
Many of us who loves this channel and its messages always forget to subscribe. Please take a moment and subscribe.